Welcome to the Elevate Review Panel for Individual and Creative Businesses, Panel 1, Day 1. We are going to begin our first application with Casa Costura. Sandy Lamb will be the primary.
Hey everyone, I thought this this application is from a textile artist who wants to create a series of free textile workshops for the Austin Latina immigrant community.
And I'm sorry, Daly, maybe I neglected to say this is the application that we would like to have translated.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's okay. That was my fault. I didn't mention it. So we'll start again. I'll start the timer over. The first application up for review is Casa Costura, and Sandy Lamb is our primary reviewer.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Aline Montenegro, yo voy a ser su intérprete el día de hoy. El primer panelista que vamos a estar llenando la aplicación para este beneficio que van a tener es para la Casa Costuras, y la señorita Sandy Lamb nos va a dar más información.
So this application is for a textile artist who wants to create a series of free textile workshops for the Austin Latina immigrant community.
So, ese primer negocio de Casa Costura es un artista. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought this application was really great. It sounds like their workshops that they've already been doing have been a safe and inclusive space for their community to learn and celebrate their cultural heritage.
Esa aplicación me parece muy buena. Ya la revisé y me parece muy buena porque quieren hablar sobre la cultura.
I also really like that they've taken a lot of measures to make sure the workshops were accessible to all.
Y lo que me gusta mucho de este negocio es que han tomado medidas muy buenas para poder incluir a varias, para que sea para varias personas, no solamente para nomás un tipo de personas.
The only question for me is I was curious to hear more about how the applicant typically promotes their events. So the application talks about speaking with community organizations. So I wondered if there were like other venues they could explore to reach more of their community.
Lo único que me da preguntas en este momento es si no vi en la aplicación que ellos estén involucrados con varias organizaciones, y mi pregunta sería si ellos podrían hacer algo para poder llegar a más personas, más organizaciones de su comunidad.
Those are all my comments.
Eso es todo.
Thank you, Sandy. We didn't have a secondary assigned to this application.
No tuvimos a nadie secundario añadido a esa aplicación.
It's Patricia. So if any of the other panelists, if you have any additional comments, this is the time to do so.
A todos los panelistas aquí presentes, si tienen algún otro comentario o pregunta, es el tiempo para hacerlas.
I see Bridget's hand.
Thanks, Patricia. I wanted to share that the intergenerational nature of this project stood out to me in a positive way, and I really loved how members of different generations would be mixing together, sharing their knowledge together during the proposed project.
Lo que me gustó mucho de esta aplicación es que están involucrando varias generaciones en ese proyecto.
Anyone else?
¿Alguien más?
I think the fact that it focuses on on things that are tactile also like gives an element of accessibility that isn't always talked about that way, but for artists who may not feel like they fit or things like, but to have something that's inclusive in a tactile way, I think is really important too.
Lo que a mí me gusta es que este negocio hace que varias personas se sientan incluidas. No solamente es para un tipo de personas, sino para varias personas y la inclusión.
Thanks, Tarina. Anyone else? Oops, I see Monica's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think on the sort of what I would have liked to see with this application was that there's a couple of things where doesn't necessarily really specify how it would reach the people that it's looking to serve. And I think some of that we kind of have to do just by inferring, but I think explicitly stating kind of the partnerships and how this would be actually, how they would get the participants and connect with them and stuff like that. I noted that. And also there's some discrepancy between the budget and the narrative in terms of how many workshops there would be. But that may be detail that's, being fleshed out.
Lo que a mí me gustaría ver es cómo van a alcanzar muchas personas y crear esas asociaciones con otras compañías o otras personas y cómo van a conectar con los participantes y cuántos talleres van a estar disponibles.
Are those all the additional comments?
Eso es todo de sus comentarios.
Thanks. Anne Marie, back to you.
Thank
Muchas
you so much. All right, thank you so much. We will go ahead and move on to our next application. Batik by Design. The primary for this application is Monica Pierce. And this panel, actually, let me just stop my timer really quickly and reset it before we get started. Okay.
And Anne Marie, can we clarify the need for the interpreter to continue or no?
Yes, that's exactly what I was about to do. So this one does not require an interpreter. We just needed an interpreter for that first application. We'll have another applicant, I believe tomorrow or Saturday, that will require Daly's assistance. But for now, we're all set. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
Me too. Okay, so again, next up is Batik by Design. Monica is the primary and Bridget will be the secondary. Whenever you're ready, I'll begin the timer for 10 minutes as soon as the primary begins speaking.
Okay, so Batik by Design has proposed a project with 1 Million Stars Texas, which is a global star weaving project with 1 billion stars. And so it's a community project that involves the community weaving stars as symbols of light to end all forms of violence. So this one for me was sort of a mid-range score. I was slightly confused about whether it was actually addressed at individuals at risk of cultural erasure. And there's some things that the way that it's written, there's some things that you can infer, but it's not necessarily actually explicitly said. So I had a bit of a mixed opinion about the application, but I did think it was very well organized in terms of the budget and the partners and the marketing. But the actual, matching it with the actual kind of aims of this grant program, I wasn't 100% sure if it sort of scored on the higher range on that side of things.
For me, I appreciated reading the application. I thought the planned activities at the EANC and senior centers seemed strongest and most focused on the target of what this grant is meant to support versus the ones at the Central Library, which would benefit all of Austin. And I would have liked to see just some more detail on the leadership's lived experience within the key constituency groups spelled out in the application. That would have helped me kind of better understand the big picture. In terms of rating, this was a medium to middle high on my scoring.
Thanks, ladies. Any additional comments from the other panelists?
I really liked this application, just the focus on like passion that was there. I think my biggest concern with this one is there was a lot of language that alluded to it resonating, like why it would resonate with the community. But I didn't see as much language as I would have liked to see how the community is informing like the design and like the implementation and execution of the programming.
Thank you. Anyone else? Erin?
Yeah, just sort of, I guess, similar, but I couldn't quite tell if the artist was rooted in the community. It was clear that they had done work in East Austin, but it didn't seem to me that it was both by and also for the community.
Thank you. If there are no more, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and finalize your scores. And then while you're working on that, our next application will be Tammy Rubin with Erin as the primary and Monica as the secondary. And I'll give you all just a second to finalize your scores. And if you just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Awesome. Excellent. All right, let me reset the timer. And we'll start with Tammy Rubin, Erin as primary.
So this project by Tammy Rubin focuses on Black women and domesticity. This is coming from an artist who's been in the Austin community for a long time, has given a lot back to the community, is very well connected. And the project itself incorporates conducting a lot of interviews from multiple generations of Black women about their work and their roles in the home sphere and homework. It has a couple of panels that go along with it. It seems really well executed. It's already got a location for one of the exhibitions. It'll have a second exhibition. It's incorporating both the community and academics. So really solid application from a well-known and well-connected artist in town. For me, the only issues that I had was that it didn't have a clear marketing plan, was one of the things that I noted. I'm looking at my notes, and the marketing plan wasn't explicit, and it wasn't explicit that it would be reaching out necessarily to the community that the project is about. and trying to kind of incorporate more folks that connect with those identities and that community to come and connect with the project. So there was a lot of work on the front end about doing great research, and the artist comes from that constituency, but I didn't see on the receiving end that it would be really pulling in those folks. That's all.
And Monica.
Yeah, I enjoyed this proposal. I thought it was very strong. This is an artist who's clearly very well involved in Austin. And I liked the component of, working with the community and also compensating, African American women for their involvement in it. I think there was kind of a missed opportunity to also include that in the budget notes, because it was a little unclear, like it didn't match with that. And echoing what Erin said about the marketing plan, I also found it a little bit lacking on how this was actually going to get out there, and the dollars associated with it, allocated for it, were very, very, very minimal. Also, I really liked they had a couple of really powerful letters of support. So yeah, generally, I really enjoyed this one.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Oh, I'm sorry. There you are, Bridget.
I also wanted to add that I really appreciated the component of the interviews, that it seemed to me the project really started with community voices and everything flowed out from that. So it was really centered in a way that I appreciated, and I enjoyed reading the application.
Anyone else? If there are no more comments, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Go ahead and finalize your scores for Tammy Rubin. And then while you're doing that, Bridget, who's the primary on the next one, Fearless Squirrel Productions, and Erin will be the secondary. So I'll let you all finish your scoring, and then if you'll give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Great, thank you. Thanks, Sandy. And Monica, are you good? Or if you need more time, we've still got a little time.
Good. I'm sorry, am I first on this one?
No, you're not. I just want to make sure that you're done finalizing your scores on Tammy's.
Okay.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next up is Fearless Squirrel Productions. Bridget, take it away.
Thanks. For Fearless Squirrel, they're asking for $24,000 for a multi-layered project based out of a monthly event at Swan Dive. This mic has become a destination for local and visiting LGBTQIA+ comics. It's explicitly a professional development space to queer the community talent, the comedy talent pipeline in Austin, sorry. There are two components to the application. One would be a high-profile competitive event that comics could use on their resumes, the cheekiest comic competition, and grow that into a monthly show with judges. The second component is more on the professional development side with a newsletter and additional in-person trainings. And they do note that instead of waiting for traditional gatekeepers to allow this work, they can use the grant and the approach to build equity. So let me just jump to my notes. I scored this on the higher side, and I felt that the focus of the two different ways to grow opportunities for queer comics in Austin with the expansion of the open mics and the professional development was great. I appreciated seeing that the initiative doesn't wait for traditional gatekeepers to sort of set the pace, and that it's based on a track record that they've already established of working in the community, and They obviously have lived knowledge of what the community is looking for, and to focus on building out the comedy scene in Austin.
Okay, I'm second on this one. I thought this was a really strong application for a project that definitely is buy-in for the queer community here in Austin, and especially really enjoyed the professional development focus. I can see a lot of really deep impact on this project in helping those comics really develop their skills, and there really is a big need for that in this community. And it seems like they've already done a lot of the work to start building out this community space. So I thought it was a really strong and, well thought out project. It didn't really address systemic racism in the proposal, and that for me didn't really match up necessarily with the priorities of the city. I noticed that it was really, I had sort of like a confusion, I guess, on what the priorities of the city are, because there's this question about displaced communities. This project clearly has a lot of community impact, and it is like directly from a marginalized community. But I know that the city of Austin's equity focus right now is on racial equity. And despite this being a artists of color, I didn't see a lot written in the application on addressing issues of racial inequity. So that was the only reason that it got docked points for me, was because it didn't quite match with the rubric, but I did think it was a really strong proposal that has benefit for the community.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Yeah, I think for me that the way that I scored was how clearly they defined that constituency. And so even if it wasn't in like their definition, addressing as much intersectionality in the, what is the mission rooted in versus what is the overarching like impact that's expected. I feel like I really appreciated applications that were like, this is what our key group is, and knowing that like the LGBTQ community is a key group that is experiencing direct displacement for me, like checked that box.
Thank you. Any additional? I don't see any hands going once. All right, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. All right, go ahead and finalize your scores. And give me a thumbs up once you're all set, and then we'll move on to the next one. Thank you. Okay, next up is ZM3 Live Productions. Torina will be our primary and Monica will be our secondary. I'll start the timer when Torina begins.
Hold up my notes. So this was a proposal that was focusing on variety showcases and performances that center artists and stories of African and Caribbean diaspora. There were strong elements of community representation, playwriting, and storytelling. But I would have liked to see more details about accessibility and to accessibility in their proposal, as well as more details within their budget.
Okay, Monica.
Yes, I agree with that. I liked the mission area, and the leadership is clearly, from the sort of key constituency group. And they have some history of, they talked about, previous plays that they had put on. But yes, I also kind of noted the accessibility aspect and also not really a marketing plan of any kind of with a lot of detail. And I also noticed in their budget, it was very inflated with in-kind, and I couldn't quite make heads or tails of why. So this was sort of a mid to kind of a mid-range one for me.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Bridget?
I appreciated in the application the mention of the mentorship and internship components, which I think were important in terms of exposure and opportunities for younger residents and younger creatives coming through the pipeline.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Anne Marie.
Okay, if everyone will go ahead and finalize their scores. And then, of course, give me a little thumbs up when you're ready to go. Great. Excellent. The next up is Karen Coker. Sandy is the primary and Aaron is the secondary. I will reset the timer. And whenever Sandy begins, I'll start it.
So this proposal wants to create a documentary about youth activism around ending desegregation of Austin Parks and Rec facilities, specifically telling the story about Barton Creek, spraying the pools. I think that the topic was really interesting and great and important, especially because it's about specifically racial equity, a story about Austin's history. And I liked how there's an intent to want to talk about the community efforts around that advocacy. I did end up scoring this proposal mid-low because I wasn't quite sure who the documentary was for. I couldn't tell if it was going to be by and for a specific community. The applicant doesn't really name the constituency. And even though there are some examples given about how the community would be involved, I wasn't sure if it meant specifically a community that was at risk of cultural risk or a displacement, as in I wasn't sure if that was who the applicant wanted to bring into the fold and include as collaborators.
Yeah, likewise, it seems like this is a super important story to tell, but I'm not 100% sure who should be telling this story. I noticed that the artist, the person writing the proposal, has done a lot of work about Barton Springs, but the history of service didn't indicate a real history of connection with the community whose story will be told. I also had some questions, not that they can do much about it, that there wasn't a lot of archival material and there weren't any people necessarily named who would be telling that story that they had connected with. I ended up just having a lot of questions about who was telling the story and how it was going to be told and who the constituency was for the project.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All right, Anne Marie.
Okay, go ahead and finalize your scores. That brings us to our first 15-minute break of the day. We are going quite quickly. All right, we'll get started with our next application up for review. It's Blue Cow Studios, and Monica will be our primary. We don't have a secondary selected for this application, but if panelists have remarks they'd like to share, we'd love to hear them. So Monica, whenever you're ready to begin, I will start the timer.
Okay, so this application from Ethan Azarian with Blue Cow Studio is for the creation of a mural at Covington Middle School, which is, I believe, is in East Austin. So this is to be a free and public, event when the mural, I think, is done as well. And so there was a lot in here that I really liked. The actual project and the support materials, I think, were very good. But the main thing that kind of dragged down my score quite significantly, actually, was that it sort of misses the mark in terms of describing kind of who this is coming from. It sort of goes back to like, who is telling the story here? Does this project actually address communities that are at risk of cultural erasure? For me, it was very ... question mark on that side. However, there were some elements that, he just talks about the demographic makeup of the school. It's a Title I, so working with a community that is likely to be economically disadvantaged. So for this one, it was a little bit borderline. And there were some elements that I liked. The budget looked good, and there was a marketing plan. But my overarching feeling was just kind of like, is this the person who should be telling this story for this neighborhood kind of thing. So those were my general impressions.
Any additional comments from the panelists?
Yeah, I think for me, this was another one that was like, okay, the community that you're doing this in and the community that you're doing this for, like, definitely experience and like are at immediate risk of displacement. But whereas when it comes to like shared leadership and the representation of those demographics in just kind of steering and designing projects, like I didn't see that evidence the way I would have hoped or would have liked. Not to say that it didn't exist, but I couldn't like find it.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Just someone who works in education a lot. Covington is in South Austin, so it's not in East Austin either. And I felt like that particular community isn't the most at risk of displacement, given some of the schools in the area that are. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context there as someone who knows the schools really well.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, because I'm more of a like, I would be there as a tourist kind of person, like that demographic. And so that's super helpful context for me. Thank you so much.
All right. Anything else? Anne-Marie?
Thank you. And Erin, I just want to say thank you for bringing in that context. And so as we continue on with our panels, I just want to highlight that if you do have some personal knowledge or you want to bring some additional context to the discussion, please feel free, especially if you are very familiar with a particular community or familiar with with any sort of aspect of a particular proposal. It's good to share that with the other panelists because they may not be aware of that context. All right, let's move on to the next application. Pink Star, Tarina will be the primary and Sandy will be the secondary. I will reset the timer. Give me one moment. And Tarina, whenever you're ready to begin, I'll start the timer.
Sorry, they're so small. So and this is kind of out of order because I prefer to kind of focus on the strengths. So sorry that it's a little disorganized, but this is a project, the School of Transgendered Music and Art. It's a new initiative for educational resources and mentorships and exhibition opportunities for transgender people in Central Texas. I really love the specificity of who their constituents are, and just like how inclusive it was. I really would have liked to see more as far as like the marketing part of it. But everything else, I feel like they did a pretty good job with their budget. When it came to multilingual offerings and accommodations, they outlined those pretty well. Their history in the community was pretty strong. And so overall, I really liked it. It was really just that one thing that I had like concerns about.
I agree. I thought the application was really strong. I liked how thoughtful and detailed and community centered the project was. It just seemed really true, rooted in community, fighting for community. And I got a really good idea of what the applicant intended to do. I went a little bit back and forth on, while the project doesn't address systemic racism, I just feel like I loved how specific it was, and this is for the trans community. And I think especially, this year and recently, there's been so much anti-trans legislation and discrimination of the trans community has been going through. So I really wanted to uplift and honor and encourage us to, or at least for me, to think about, maybe this is a community we should consider at risk of cultural erasure and displacement. So those are my thoughts.
Any additional comments?
Can just
Yes, go ahead.
kind
Ann.
of speak in, so I can speak in agreement. I think this is an artist who's done a lot for their community and is very, very deeply rooted. And I also really appreciated that very specific constituency, and also a group that is really, really at high risk of displacement and cultural erasure right now. So I thought it was a really strong application.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Please go ahead and finalize your scores. And then go ahead and bring up the next application, which is Kiara Harris. Aaron is the primary and Sandy is the secondary. And if you'll just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. All right, Aaron, go ahead and I'll start the timer for 10 minutes as soon as you start speaking.
This is a project by a Black, queer, and non-binary fashion designer who is proposing to do a creative talent show highlighting Q BIPOC artists, designers, and creatives, really trying to establish a really big presence here in Austin. I think that the artist is a very strong contender, given their personal identity. I would really like to support this application, but I really struggled to find the content in it around what the community was and what the actual project was about. Some of the answers were just one sentence, and I really wanted to get more juice out of what the proposal was about. It started off really strong with a lot of great information about the reason why, gender fluid, non-binary, non-conforming folks need representation, especially supporting BIPOC fashion designers. I was really excited about it, but once it started getting further into the details of the project, I couldn't really get an idea of what the events would be like and who would be attending them, and also like what other artists would be included. I couldn't tell if this was a proposal that was just to support one artist in developing work, or if it would have like a public component where we would be able to see the community engage and being uplifted and supported. So for me, I was like really excited about it. And then I was like, give me more information about what this project is about so that I can score it higher. So that would be my notes for next time. But I think, overall, a great idea.
I agreed with Erin on all fronts. I thought it was such a cool, I really like the passion behind the project. I love that it was a clear, inclusive project, but I just would have really liked to see more details.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this project?
I would just echo that I would have loved to see just more of a plan of just more content of like what the actual project was, because the support material and the lived experience, like it hit a lot of marks for me, but I just don't know enough about what actually would be happening.
Thank you. Additional comments? Anne-Marie?
Thank you. All right, go ahead and finalize your scores for this application. And as you're doing that, if you want to go ahead and pull up awesome art, Monica will be the primary and Erin is the secondary, and then just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. Okay, Monica, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer for 10 minutes.
Okay, so this is awesome art with Allison Lash. And so this project is about art making for healthy healing, and very much about kind of creating safe spaces for people who have been historically underrepresented, BIPOC, people with disabilities, senior citizens, LGBTQ plus, etc. So, some of the art making activities are clay, fibers weaving, foam plate printmaking. So there's a lot here that I think is pretty interesting. This proposal was a little bit kind of mid to low for me, mainly because I felt I kept kind of having this feeling that even though the language was very inclusive, I feel like there wasn't a lot about how specifically they would reach those communities. And also, when I looked at their website, there really wasn't anything to kind of corroborate what was in their application. So I kind of felt like they were, presenting themselves in one way for this grant, but publicly not really, which makes me think that when you go to community reach, if that's you're putting out there, doesn't match with what you're sort of proposing. So anyway, this one was sort of mid to low for me, generally well organized. So and hit a lot of hit like their marketing plan. Like there was a lot that was good about it, but just overall I kind of had this nagging feeling about whether this was actually, kind of fitting with the grant parameters that we're working with here.
Yeah, likewise, I felt like I couldn't I didn't really see how the artist proposing was connected really deeply to the communities. I also thought that the proposed constituency was super broad and had kind of like words like just marginalized communities, underserved people. I couldn't really see how it was necessarily like by and for a community. The location of the events, like Brentwood Social House, is in an area where it's not super diverse. I didn't see a lot of people who were coming from displaced or marginalized communities making their way to Brentwood Social House to attend these events and feeling comfortable there. And so, yeah, it was mid to low for me. I couldn't really see that it was really like connected to what it was saying it was about.
Thank you. Any additional comments from panelists? Not? Anne Marie.
Okay, go ahead and finalize your scores. All right, next up is Christina Ciccelli. Sandy Lamb will be the primary for this one. Sandy, as soon as you're ready, just give me a thumbs up and I'll start the timer for 10 minutes.
Okay. This proposal is wants to create a series of workshops for BIPOC women with disabilities, including writing workshops and also wellness workshops. I scored this applicant high. I liked that it was both writing and wellness to kind of like address both art, but also like maybe providing like some sort of like social service or wellness for their community. It seemed intentional in how they wanted to include their constituencies' voices as part of the project. So whether that's like specifically naming that they wanted members of their constituency to be part of leadership for this project or as collaborators. And then I also liked how they were planning to host town hall meetings so that community members could give input on the project. And I like how that they thought about accessibility and intersectionality for this project as well.
Any additional comments on this application?
For me, again, I scored high on this one because I felt like special considerations for accessibility related to mental health is central to the group's efforts. And I know it's a new initiative, but if all the proposed projects take place as planned, I think the opportunity creation and community benefit could be substantial. So I appreciated that they were taking the initiative to build and coalesce these members together.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just add, I really liked, I liked this project, and I thought there could really be there could be a real need for it. The only thing I wanted to, that would be sort of a missed opportunity is that, you know, this application is very much framed around accessibility, but their answer for the accessibility was a little bit broad to an extent, and it doesn't really mention specific accommodations for those with, you know, with disabilities. So that I could use some shoring up, I would say.
Thank you. Anything else? Oh, Tarina, we can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, sorry. I had switched headphones. I think I just had like budget concerns. I know that they noted they hadn't really been in business since 2017. Which and then they provided some like really understandable reasons why. My other concern was just I would have liked to see a stronger component of like how are you getting that mix of engaging your local community as well as drawing in tourists or visitors, kind of to just see a more intentional, like, how is that being done? Not that it can't be or that it wouldn't be appealing to them, but in wanting to see that outlined in marketing.
Thank you. If there are no more comments, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and finalize our scores. Well, I'm not giving scores, but your scores. And then we'll move on to our next application before our lunch break. So we're just traveling quite quickly through our list today, which is fine. The next application for review is Regine Milibran. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Sandy Lamb is the primary, and secondary is Aaron. Once you both are ready, if you'll give me a thumbs up, I will reset the timer here very quickly. And we'll get started. Okay, great.
All right, so this applicant would like to create a multimedia exhibit that will explore modern day Filipino resistance and decolonizing the future. I thought this was such a powerful and specific topic, and I really like that. I was impressed by the applicant's work and their history in serving Black and Asian communities in Austin. I also liked how in every part of the project, they intend to hire and include Filipino community leaders, consultants, and artists who will influence the creative vision of the exhibit. I especially thought, I especially liked how they wanted to hire a Filipino PR specialist, to reach those audiences as well. I think the only thing I wish I'd seen more of is the applicant really didn't talk about how they would make their activities accessible for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, similar to Sandy, I thought it was a really strong proposal for someone who clearly has a lot of deep roots and deep connection to both their lived experience and also uplifting folks from marginalized communities or from the Black community in Austin. And I thought it was a solid proposal. I really also liked how they were going to be really focusing on this one specific topic, and also that all of the people who would be contributing the project would be from that lived experience. Really solid proposal in my book.
Any additional comments?
I just found it super, super compelling and well organized. Great application.
On the language and accessibility side, I appreciated that the materials were going to be made available in Tagalog as well as English. So I think that becomes kind of almost an archival resource going forward. So I really appreciated that effort that they're making.
All right. If there are no additional comments, then Anne-Marie.
All right, go ahead and finalize your scores for this applicant. We have hit our scheduled lunch break pretty early. So since we have on our website that we would begin the afternoon session at 1, we'll just have an extended lunch hour. I would recommend if the panelists could be back maybe 10 till 1. That would be great. So about 12:50, so we can log in, make sure it. So the first application we're going to review this afternoon is Reki Jane. Tarina is going to be the primary and Aaron will be the secondary. I will get the timer ready. And Tarina, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer.
For this proposal was Behind the Sorry: Intergenerational Storytelling, Women's Work in Immigrant Life in Texas, focused on labor, community, and migration, amongst South Asian female diaspora. The components I really appreciated about it were that it's intergenerational and it centered experiences that were shared by this group during the civil rights movement. As a tourist, it's something that I would be really interested in attending. They had multilingual components, and they did a good job with demonstrating a history of service and clarity around their mission, clarity around who their key constituents were. And my only concern really was the marketing aspect of it, of how they were going to get the word out around this project. But everything else, I really loved it.
I also thought it was a really strong proposal. I thought that it was a very tight and focused proposal. And I loved the intergenerational aspect of it. I could kind of see the project in my mind when I was reading the proposal. And I also yeah, I thought that there would be a lot of great community input. I liked that there would be a lot of different people talked about and different people interviewed for the project. So a lot of community voice there. The only question that I had was if this particular community was one of the most identified by the city of Austin as at immediate risk of displacement. That was really the only concern I had. I did question the marketing plan, which wasn't super fleshed out. But it's a little bit unclear to me what the city is looking for as far as what marginalized groups are being focused on. And so that was a question in my mind about it. But otherwise, great proposal, really clear, really easy to understand what it would be that would be funded.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Yes, Bridget.
I also appreciated that there was a phase 2 described with the screening and the discussion panel that connected the stories and lived experiences of multiple BIPOC women throughout Austin, and kind of expanding and adding to that primary focus on the South Asian community. The only question I had about this application was, would it be possible to look at the stipends that were being offered or were spelled out in the budget? They seemed modest, and I wondered if maybe that was an area they could grow since those interviews kind of form the core of the project.
Any additional comments?
I guess I would, just picking up what Bridget said, I had a note similar to that in the budget that, there's a good amount of detail, but a lot of it is going to one individual, seemingly. And in general, I think that's fine, but it wasn't completely in sync with how other parts were described.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Please go ahead and finalize your scores. And we'll move on to Jasmine Beatty. Tarina again is the primary and Bridget will be the secondary.
I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt for one quick second?
Yes.
For that last application, please strike my note. I was looking at the wrong application.
Thank you.
And Tarina, before you get started, if you'll note, you have a slight delay. I finally figured it out. You have a slight delay on your sound. So if you will, when you flip your mic on and just give us like 2 seconds, and then I finally figured it out.
You may start whenever you're ready.
Project was family variety shows, different performances. I really liked how family centric it was, not just inclusive of kids, but it being really intergenerational and family oriented, while still being very intentional about intersectionality, supporting Black and queer communities. I would have liked to see stronger marketing language, or language around the impact on the arts and cultural scene. When it came to accessibility, they included ASL interpreters and bilingual staff. They had a really good history of being rooted in the community, good details on the activities that they'd be including. So overall, it was a pretty strong application.
For this one, I scored this one medium high. I really appreciated all of the facets of the project and work that's been happening prior to this application. It gave me a good sense of the history of the applicant's work in the community. And I thought maybe I could have used more details about how the new funds would be put into the projects that are already underway to expand them, grow them. And that's sort of also part of the idea of seeing maybe a more detailed budget, or even adding a budget narrative to that section to kind of show the difference between the phases of the projects.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this project?
I also thought it was a really strong application and from somebody who really has done a lot for the community and has given a lot to the community and is very like community focused. I love the family aspect of it. I thought, especially in this time where there's a lot of legislation around queer identified folks and drag and children. I thought it was a really great proposal to include families in this type of project.
Anyone else? If not, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Please go ahead and finalize your scores. Next, we will be reviewing Austin Visual Arts Association. Monica will be our primary for this application. And whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Yeah, so this project, the Austin Visual Arts Association was proposing a fiscally sponsored project, the Greater Tomorrow Youth Art Program, which is basically summer art workshops for economically disadvantaged children in Austin, typically 9 to 16 years of age. So I scored this one very high. I liked it a lot. It seemed like it had a very good mission to serve primarily BIPOC/Hispanic youth in Austin. And I thought it was fairly well organized. There was one thing around the community voice and how it would be involved. I had a note here that this could sort of be inferred through other answers, but in their actual answer, it's not specifically addressed. So I wanted to point that out. And great on accessibility. And I liked their approach to marketing towards kind of the communities that they were looking to serve. So overall, this one was quite high for me. I liked it quite a bit.
I missed that. All right. Any additional comments? If not, Anne Marie.
Great, thank you. Please go ahead and finalize your scores. And we will move on to the mall. And Monica again is the primary. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer.
So this application, the mall, they were proposing to do 6 community events that are centered around self-defense, and also around well-being and community health for gender diverse artists, women artists, queer artists, artists of color, and their intersections. I thought this application was pretty interesting. I liked it. It was sort of mid to high for me. The actual application, you know, it talks about doing 6 community defense events, kind of every one would be 4 hours, every 2 months, and each of the events would include a workshop, a social activity, a live performance, and then multiple vendors. So sounds like it's a little bit like part self-defense, part like arts market. So definitely unique, because I've never seen anything like that before, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And I was sort of wondering in the budget, gave me a little bit of pause in terms of it was saying that it was for 6 events, but there's 12 months of space rental, which seemed like a little bit like of a stretch for if it really is like event based. But overall, I thought this was pretty interesting in terms of, you know, addressing key constituents. I think it does, but I would be interested to hear what my colleagues' kind of interpretation of some of these answers were.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
For me, the proposal stood out and was unique because of its focus on harm reduction for its key constituencies. So that was something that made it, in my reading, unique in the pool of applications.
Thank you. Erin?
Yeah, I can provide a little context, I guess. I've been there. I think the 12-month, it's a space. It's like a store. And then they have events. So I think that probably the 12 months supports the year-round just like, you know, rent of the space there. I thought this project was great because it provides a lot of economic opportunity for a variety of different people. It did seem like the constituency was kind of broad and included a wide range of people, but I also did appreciate that they broke down the, you know, the background identities of the people who are focused in the store. And so you could really see like who was going to be impacted. So I thought that that was really strong. They had some good data behind it. The event, I could really see the sort of like space in the store because I've been inside of it before, but I was curious about some of the event proposals, you know, what those events would be like and stuff like that. So overall, I thought it was a pretty strong application that supported a wide range of communities.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if not, Anne Marie.
Okay, please finalize your scores. And then next up is Juan Christian King Teddams. Erin will be the primary. And before I forget, let me reset the timer. There's 10 minutes and I'll start the timer as soon as Erin begins speaking.
So this project comes from someone who is, you know, homegrown from East Austin, formerly undocumented Latinx musician and performer. I thought overall it was a pretty strong application. The thing that I liked about it was that there was a lot of community involvement. So it would be to create these sculptures and then have a sound piece that interacted with the community. And what there was a processional piece to it, so we could, you know, see it going through the neighborhood. For me, it seemed like this is an artist who has spent time outside of Austin and perhaps done projects that weren't necessarily equity focused from the start, and has kind of returned to Austin. I think they're trying to replicate a project that they did while they were living in New York, but so it had this sort of like homecoming feel, like trying to bring their work that they've done outside of Austin home to their hometown where they, you know, have their roots. And so I thought that that was good, but it also sort of lacked a piece of what would the benefit to the community be outside of the processional or attending the performance. And also, how would we make sure that the people who are from this person's community are going to be attending that event and being included in it. So it was sort of mixed for me. I was really excited about it. I thought the person who's doing the work definitely comes from a key constituency. And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more connection to that home feel.
Thank you. Any additional comments? If not, Anne Marie.
All right, please finalize your scores. Up next is Jean-Jacques Barrera. Bridget is the primary.
Okay, in the proposal from Jean-Jacques or JJ Barrera, there's a request for 25,000. The project is to create a music series that incorporates Mexican-American music elements of the 1960s. The tribute to La Orquesta Tejana is a music project that seeks to educate and empower community members by showcasing music of the Mexican-American community. And it will work to fill a gap in Austin's music history through a series of 3 public music performances. This application scored high for me. I appreciated that the proposed project would help bring more visibility to the Mexican-American history and also the contemporary work in Austin's music scene, and help fill in some of the histories which are not spotlit. And I also like the multi-dimensional nature of the programming because there were performances, outreach. There's even a planned display of the musical score itself. So I felt like it had a lot of different dynamic components in the plan.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Yeah, I can add a comment here. I thought this was really interesting. This was sort of a mid-level score for me. The aspect of displaying the score to me was intriguing, and you know, as a composer, you know, I think if that is a component, oftentimes that's, you know, it might be like a graphic score. There's something that's like visually kind of part of it. And I'm not sure if that, I was curious the question of why, if it was like so that people can just like see the historical or make a connection to the historical aspect or what. Anyway, it's just not something that's very common. So I thought it was interesting, but also a little bit like made me curious as to why, like what the rationale was. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I really like this proposal. I thought it was something that, you know, definitely needs to be seen. But I did have one note that I didn't really see a lot of like understanding of intersectionality in the proposal. And I would have just really loved to have seen this sort of historical focus and then like, let's see about, you know, including women, queer folks, other folks into the conversation of a type of music that's very male dominated. And so that way it lost a couple points for me on that one, but I thought it was a pretty good application.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, Anne Marie.
Please finalize your scores. All right, next up for review is the Proyecto, or Proyecto. And Bridget is the primary and Sandy is the secondary. And Bridget, as soon as you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just
Okay,
fine. Just
okay.
give me 1 second. I need to actually
Okay.
reset the timer here before you get going. All right, I'm all set.
Okay, great. So the proposal is asking for 25,000 and the aim is to impact artists and communities through programming dedicated to growing artist careers and via mentorship and paid time to create new work. The programs proposed would include residencies, one connecting between cities in Mexico and Austin itself, focused on emerging artists of color. And as a deliverable, the artists would offer open studio sessions for community engagement, as well as mentorship to younger and less experienced artists. And there could possibly also be a showcase during the Austin studio tour, allowing the artists to engage with the community and promote connectivity with their work. Overall, the application scored medium high for me. I thought the application could have benefited from a more detailed description of the work plan. And I would have liked to see more information on the partnerships and the proposed or intended impacts, but some more detail on the partnerships, especially with the other cities, would have helped. And I would have liked to see kind of more of a breakdown in the marketing plan and the budget sections. That would have helped me to better visualize or conceptualize the proposal.
I also scored this application around the mid-range. I had a lot of mixed feelings about the application, but I couldn't quite articulate why. I think it might have just been I wanted more detail on a lot of things. I wanted to hear more about how community voice would be included in the activities that were suggested in the proposal.
Would have also liked to hear more about opportunities created for their constituency through this work. Maybe like constituency members could be hired as administrators or facilitators or guest speakers. And intersectionality was acknowledged, but I didn't really get an idea of like how it would be included and considered and be a key part of the project.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
I was just gonna add, I think they could potentially put some attention on the accessibility aspect, particularly for individuals in the disability community.
Anyone else? Anne Marie.
Okay, please finalize your scores. And that brings us to our afternoon break. So I'll give you all 15 minutes. So we'll be back at 1:43. All right, see you soon. Thank you. All right, we have 6 more applications to go. The next one up is Cassie Long Music, or CLM. Erin Gentry is going to be the primary, secondary is Bridget, and Sandy has a conflict. So Sandy, if you'll be sure to go off camera, we will let you know when it's time to come back on. And that'll be after we finalize the scores for this application. So Erin, timer is ready. So whenever you're set, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, so this project is for an album release with a bunch of events that come along with it in support of the album release, including some live art collaborations, storytelling and writing workshop, and self-portrait, and then the release party. It has a really strong intersectional component focusing on the AAPI and queer communities. The artist seems very well connected to the AAPI and queer communities in Austin. There's a lot of people involved in the project. I really liked this project a lot. I thought it was really strong. I really appreciated that they outlined all of the different people who are going to be included in the project and all of their different identities, so that we could see that it wasn't just one person who is from a marginalized community who's going to be benefiting from the funds, but that it would have this kind of like larger impact in the community. I thought that the writing component, the storytelling component connected with the AAPI Center in Austin was great. They have obviously a lot of tours planned around Texas too, including UTSA and other areas. Overall, I thought it was a really strong application. The only thing that really stuck out to me was that they didn't have any proposal for ESL. They essentially just said that they hadn't been requested anything, which was outlined explicitly in the question that wasn't included. And so I really would have liked to have seen some kind of nod, especially since we're talking about communities and immigrant communities that are speaking multiple different languages outside of English. So just a nod to that would have been really great.
Not to repeat, but just to sort of accentuate what Aaron said, I agree with all those points. This was a really strong application in my mind. It scored high for me. Standout components of it were the intersectionality throughout the projects. And also another thing that stood out in a positive way was that the project was aiming to have multiple months of programming and not have them only in May, which is the month that celebrates AAPI heritage. I think that's a great benefit for the city and also greater visibility for AAPI communities in Austin. So I really appreciate the intention behind that.
Any additional comments?
Yeah, I'll jump in just to note, I also thought this was super strong. One thing that was somewhat unique with this proposal and the intersectionality question was that they also addressed that there can be conflicts between different kind of identities and how that can, be an issue to work through. And the way that they kind of described that, I liked that and seemed very transparent and honest. And I also really liked in the opportunity creation and community benefit that they are creating like 20 jobs for individuals, or so that's a lot of community benefit, which I thought was really strong.
Additional comments? All right, Anne Marie.
Thank you. Go ahead and start finalizing your scores. And if you'll just wait just 1 second, Sandy, I'll let you know when to come back on camera. I'm gonna give everyone a chance to do their scoring. Everybody good to go? Great. All right, Sandy, you can go ahead and come back on screen. Next, we will be reviewing Lindsay Milliken, and Sandy is going to be our primary reviewer. You're back just in time.
Great.
Let me reset the timer, and whenever you're ready, you can begin.
So this project is to create a mural celebrating the LGBTQIA+ community in Austin. I scored this applicant in the mid-low range. I appreciated that they're a very experienced muralist, but it didn't really come across me that they had a history of serving the queer community, who they named as their key constituency. They talked about wanting to especially center trans women and queer people of color, but I wasn't really sure what that was going to look like. Are they going to be collaborators? Would they be consulted? I did like how there was going to be an interview piece of the project. They were going to interview members of the queer community to kind of inform, I guess, what the project would look like. I think it'd be great to see if these interviewees were compensated for this work, like as a way of like acknowledging their contributions. And then I am not a muralist, so I don't know how these things tend to work, but the applicant mentioned like as a way to be inclusive to individuals with disabilities, they would be able to like participate by like creating pieces in a separate space that could be added to the mural, which to me didn't really feel like inclusive. It felt more like this is like a separate space, a separate way for individuals with disabilities to participate. So I was wondering, like, is there a mural space in Austin that would be accessible so there wouldn't have to be a separate space? And then my last note was, even though the mural is visual, I think there are ways the applicant could have thought about language access for this project. So, you know, even though the mural is visual, there's probably like marketing materials, or if there's any events around this program, there might be a need for interpreters. So those are my notes.
Right. Any additional comments? Yes, Torina.
This was one just with the parameters we were given that I struggled with, because with accessibility, it was very much like, did they articulate accommodations or did they not articulate accommodations? And there wasn't room for us to be like, yeah, but like that's not actually achieving the thing. It was like, did they try or not kind of thing. And so I feel like even if it's and it could be for lack of experience, it could be for a whole host of reasons. But even if it's in reading it, recognizing that it falls short in what accommodations are intended to achieve, like the accommodation was still like attempted and made in ways that like a lot of other, not to compare applications, but there are applications where that just that attempt didn't exist at all. And so and me in scoring, just trying to figure out like how to best like honor and articulate that in the options given.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
Yeah, for me, this one was sort of in the mid-range, and some of the concerns that have been brought up, I also shared. And I would just add about the marketing plan. There's not really, other than having a videographer, there's not really any real plan to let the community know. And in some of the narrative, it was quite organized, and I liked the support material and murals. They all looked beautiful. But in terms of how they actually work with the community, yeah, it seemed quite kind of broad in some ways. So, but anyway, it was definitely a decent proposal.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, if not, Anne-Marie.
Okay, go ahead and finalize your scores. And while you're doing that, you can also pull up the next application. And Taro scroll. Aaron is the primary and Torina is the secondary. And Aaron, whenever you're ready, the timer's set to go. And I'll start timing the 10 minutes once you begin speaking.
So this project from Eterno Scroll, it seems to be a band of Latino artists who are going to be doing a music study and performance project. They've got a couple of things that they are planning to do. Sorry, I'm trying to get to my notes here. Where did they go? I was just on it. Okay, so they'll have a music and art showcase. They will be doing some community collaborations, fostering a sense of belonging and amplifying marginalized voices. They'll be doing some interactive workshops focusing on traditional Mexican music and then hosting benefit concerts. I thought overall the proposal was pretty strong. I couldn't quite get a sense of like the showcase was for this one particular band and that these individual artists in the band were the community, or if they were going to be bringing in other bands that are BIPOC or Latinx. Like, are they putting on an event or is it a show of their music? That was a big question in my mind. They seem pretty well connected in Austin. I thought it was a little bit strange that they were saying that they were, you know, connected to very underserved organizations, but some of the ones that they listed were ones that are pretty well known and pretty well funded by the city of Austin. And so overall, it was a strong proposal. It was well written. It answered a lot of the key questions, but I wasn't quite sure that it was going to be reaching marginalized communities, and it didn't explicitly say what marginalized communities it was going to be serving. Yeah, that was kind of my take on it.
Kind of an overview about the performances and some of the project components. Shared some of the same concerns regarding like what communities, who is their key constituents and how are they being engaged and involved in the design of the proposal. I also had, because in the questions about community relationships, they mentioned like ticket sales and things like that, as far as like support from the community, as far as financial support, but in their budget, there isn't any financial history that's provided. And so just I was left like with questions around the inconsistencies around that. But overall, when it comes to like the programming and the performances and the context of the performances, I really liked the content there for this application.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this application?
Sort of kind of hesitant to mention this, but I think it is important, which is that I feel like we don't want to consider, you know, grantsmanship, you know, too much, right, in this process. But I would encourage, I feel like there's some questions in here that have some ChatGPT kind of vibe to them, which is not against any rules or anything like that. But I think there's elements of this that the spirit of it has gotten a little bit lost in trying to make it sound a certain way. And I think the actual project itself is maybe quite good. But the way that it's presented in here kind of has lost a little bit of its core from what I've read. And the other thing I want to mention is that something that stuck out to me is that there's a lot of hypotheticals, you know, of like it, you know, it might cost this much, or like this would be an average, you know, kind of thing. And when that's leaned on too much, then it kind of, you lose a little trust on whether there's an actual plan in place. So I mean, the actual, you know, the music video and an album, and I would love to have seen the proposal be more about that, to know more about what the details are of what they're actually trying to do.
So Monica, if I can, to help clarify a couple of things that you said, that it appeared, this is what I heard, that it appeared that there was language that lacked some depth and seemed more generic in its usage. Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Anne Marie.
Okay, go ahead and finalize your scores. And while you're doing that, we will pull up the next application up for review. Malika Budisa, and Bridget is the primary and Monica is the secondary.
Okay, so for the proposal from Malika Budisa, it's a request for $25,000 for Synth Lab ATX, empowering underrepresented voices in music production, with a design of 10 workshops that have a goal of challenging systemic bias in the music industry, aiming to create an environment not only addressing critical need for diversity and representation in the industry, but also to foster learning, creativity, and personal growth for the participants. The proposal has been specifically created for the LGBTQ, female, non-binary, and BIPOC communities in Austin. This proposal scored high for me. I valued that the project offers skill building to community members so that they can take the new expertise they develop into projects of their own, and therefore has an amplifying effect for creatives in BIPOC, female, LGBTQ, and non-binary communities, especially regards to an industry that is not always welcoming or making and holding space for them. I thought it showed a responsiveness to needs in the community and brings the participants and the community members on board for shaping its direction. And I appreciated the idea that by teaching others how to create and direct their own music recordings, it seems to me to have an important ripple effect in the musical community of Austin. So giving people these skill sets lets them go and do a wide range of projects of their own devising, which should lead to interesting outcomes.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed this proposal, and as somebody who is kind of versed in kind of music technology, I think there would be a lot of I think people would really respond to this, and yeah, I think there'd be a lot of interest, and I thought it was well presented. My main kind of thing that I would have loved to see was just a little bit more about what the actual workshops would entail, without maybe getting too much into, you know, too much technical language. I think it still would have been helpful to know what each of the workshops were going to be specifically about. And the other, you know, the other aspect, I mean, lack of representation and kind of gatekeeping in that community is super huge. So I really appreciated this proposal from that perspective too. And the only other comment I was going to say is just that it seemed like there could have been a bit of a missed opportunity to pay other artists in the mix. And if that was part of it and I missed it, it's possible, but I noted that in a couple of places. It's mainly this budget is for one artist to put on the workshops, and equipment and, you know, and everything like that. So but I really liked this proposal a lot. I thought it was really strong.
Thank you. Any additional comments? If there are none, Anne Marie.
Okay, let's finalize your scores. And then the next application is Kevin Johnson. And Bridget will be the primary on this application. So whenever you're ready, Bridget, you may begin.
Okay, in this application, Kevin Johnson is requesting $25,000 for Rainbow Rendezvous and Embracing Diversity, which would be a month-long event in Austin showcasing art and music of the LGBTQ+ community. The vision for it is an opening day kicking off an art exhibition, which would showcase the works of local LGBTQ+ artists. That opening day would conclude with a concert and community dance party. And then throughout the month, the art would remain on view, open to the public. And then there'd be a culminating or closing event, which would feature an artist showcase where selected artists would speak about their work, share their inspirations. It would then be followed by a benefit auction of selected art pieces, with the proceeds going to support the artists themselves, as well as local LGBTQ+ organizations, and then encapsulated with a farewell celebration. The proposal scored high for me. I valued the project's proposed creation of safe and open spaces where the community could be celebrated during a time of increasing cultural pressures. And I appreciated that the application centered their response on the intersectionality, on the aspect of the LGBTQ+'s diverse and multifaceted community identities, and elements such as race, gender, class, and others were emphasized as a part of that response, which I thought helped me envision the project.
Thank you. Any additional comments on this project?
I wanted to add that I thought it was kind of interesting that they were suggesting that artists were going to donate back their art. Not that, I mean, maybe that is a common practice, but to me that felt a little bit not terribly artist friendly for one where you know you're asking for funds. But yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Anything else? Yes, Erin.
This one kind of ranked a little bit lower for me. I felt like it didn't really address racial equity at all, and sort of was kind of like, it seems kind of like it's a business that was going to throw an event, and I saw it using a lot of broad terminology like diversity and all are welcome and stuff like that. And it's just, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a real focus on impact and intersectional identities and racial equity.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Anne Marie.
Okay, we're on our last application to review for today. We'll go ahead and get that pulled up. It's Modesta Trevino. Erin is the primary and Tarina is the secondary. And I just want to say that after this session, or after this application is reviewed and we finalize scores, we'll go into like a little post session to just get prepped for the other half day tomorrow for the rest of the individual creative business day 1 or panel 1 session, and answer any questions. So I just want to give you all a heads up. Those should be less than 15 minutes. So you'll be getting out of here a little bit earlier. Okay, if Erin is ready, actually, let me reset the timer. And whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Okay, so this project from Modesta Trevino is for a retrospective exhibition for the artist Jose Trevino, who's a local Chicano artist who passed away, I think, in 2022. It'll be collecting a lot of artwork from prolific artists from East Austin that gave a lot to the community. There'll be an afternoon exhibition of the work and also the documentation piece of it. The documentation will be donated to the Austin Public Library. I thought in general, this was a super strong application, definitely by and for the community that the constituency comes from, or the artist comes from. I took a couple of points off of it because it didn't seem like there was a lot of like community voice aspect to it. It is a retrospective, but there could have been a lot of opportunity for someone who's made a deep impact in the Chicano community in Austin to speak or talk, or there just wasn't a lot of talk, inclusion of other voices to talk about the impact of that artist. The artist graduated from a local Travis High School. It would have been really cool to see a little bit more impact beyond just this one afternoon. I know that this stuff's going to be documented and donated to the library, but I would have loved to have seen an education component connecting back to Travis High School or to Chicano or Latino artists in Austin that are in the K-12 system. But overall, it scored super high for me. I thought, this is a meaningful project to document an artist who is from Austin, a Chicano artist who's done a lot for the community. And I just want to see more of it, I guess, is my complaints about it. I want to see more impact coming from the project.
Really appreciated the clarity of like, this is who, like this, like specificity around the community that is being like represented and engaged in their project of being specific to Chicano community. I would have liked to see more about how like the community would be involved in like shaping and designing the project. I feel like there was a missed opportunity about thinking about how to make it accessible for people with different abilities. I would have liked to see kind of just a stronger plan as far as marketing. But I did really like the component of giving, donating to either like a local institution or library, and really saw that as a way of investing in long-term impact by increasing the educational assets available locally, the educational assets reflective of that demographic available locally. And so I really liked this application.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments? Bridget?
One thing that I wanted to mention is just because of my work as a curator, I feel like this proposal also had the importance of the power of the archive, which is by doing this project and making the film, and then, as my colleagues have mentioned, having it be publicly accessible, that then becomes content that researchers and future art historians can connect back to better understand the period in which Jose Trevino was working in Austin. So I think that that's an important element that stood out to me in the proposal.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, if not, Anne-Marie.
All right, go ahead and finalize your scores. And that wraps up end of day one of individual creative business panels. We'll start tomorrow at let's see, at 10 a.m. For the public. That's when we'll start that session. And we'll go through probably noon to 12:30 or so, depending on how quickly, if we're doing the same pace as we did today.